Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we will start creating our own game. So this is where we had left off. So let's delete these game objects. I'll delete cube by clicking on delete, click on the sphere and delete it. We will also delete the new folder, the scripts folder, the material and the prefab. So we will start from a very fresh project. So first things first, let's click on file and save scenes because we want to save this scene. It will store it in the computer. So I will name it as main because this is the main level of our game. So let's click on save. So scene is like a level in our game. So if you want to know what is scene, it's like a level in our game, and we have saved the scene. Let's just click on save scene, save project. So it will completely save everything. Now let's create a cube. So and we need to reset this, okay, so that the position is 0 0 0 or it's in the origin. So click on the gear and reset, so it's back in the origin. Let's name it as ground, and I would want to scale it to 20, 0.1 and 20. These are the numbers I already stored in. I've already written it down so that it becomes easier to work with. So this is our ground, and I would also want to create a folder and let's call it scenes, and let's put this main folder, click on it and drag it into the scenes folder. Then click on create and create another folder and let's call it materials. Click on materials folder and let's create a new material and let's call it ground because it's the material of the ground. Now let's click on albedo and we will write the color as 203, 203, then 198 and 37. So this is just the red, green, blue mixture which I want to put the values, and A is the alpha which tells the transparency. So if I reduce it, I will not be able to see it. So we need to put it as 255. You can put any color you want, but I want to use this color. So let's drag and drop it on the ground. So we got the ground color. Now let's create another object which is a cube and let's call it player. Again, let's reset it, and I want to put it a little above. We can't put it inside the ground, so I will put it at 1.64, just above, so that with the rigid body it will come down. So, and as I said rigid body, let's add rigid body. So till now we have this and it falls down. Then let's give another color for this and let's create another material. Let's call it as player because it's the material of the player. Click on albedo and I will give the color as 152, 23 and 127. So it's kind of a bit of purple color, and I will drag it onto the player. So this is what we have, a player which is falling down, but I don't like this view of the camera, this view. So we will change the position and the rotation of the camera. So click on camera, main camera, and set it at 0, 8.82 and minus 13.66, and the rotation only at the x-axis we need 40.969. So now let's look at it, how it is. So this is how it will look, and we can also see the whole ground as well, so it would be very helpful. So let's stop it, and we will click on assets and create a folder called as scripts. So we will be starting to write our first C# script, and let's call it as player, because everything related to the player will be in the script. So click on this player, go down and drag the script onto the inspector. So we have attached the script to the player. So the player will now be able to do different functionalities which we will write down. So let's click on player. So the first thing which we'll see is a few lines of code. Let me just zoom in. So if you want to zoom in, hold on Control or Command in Mac, Shift and plus sign. And now we can zoom in. Yes, so it's a bit too much. Control Shift minus to zoom out. And let's click on this OK. So you see a few lines of code here, and I will briefly go over it, this C# script, and if you have any doubts you can just write it down in the comment section. And if you want to know about the basics of C#, you can go up to the YouTube tutorials or just search C# basics, so you will get a brief understanding of how scripting works. So the first 3 lines, these are called the namespaces: system.collections, system.collections.generic and Unity engine. These are the namespaces, and namespaces is like a program which has functionalities which we can use directly in our script to reduce the number of lines in our code. So we need not write hard-coded stuff. We can directly use it, so it becomes a little easier to use. Now this line tells us about this player script. Mono behavior is a class, or I should rather say a script, which is taken from the Unity engine namespace. And if you want to know what is system.collections, it is mostly about array list, and system.collections.generic contains list. Yes, the terms may be a little confusing, but just for knowing it, and if you are not able to understand, it's okay. It won't worry, it won't just make you worry a lot. So system.collection, Unity engine. So mono behavior, so I will want to hold on Control and apostrophe mark. It will take you to the documentation about what is mono behavior, and click on this mono behavior and it will take you. So there are so many functions, functions are like behaviors of the script, and if you want to know more about these functions, you can just click on them on mouse down, so you will get to know more about it. So this was mono behavior. Mono behavior is the base class from which every Unity script derives. Simply it means that it contains basic functionalities which we can use, like start or update, and these start and update is like the behavior or what this player will do in simple words. So now I've said a lot of things about all these things. Don't just think like what is all these things. because our main focus would be on what we will write. It's just for knowledge. If you are able to understand, that's great. If you're not, write it down in the comments so I will answer it as quickly as possible. So, and a useful tip, you can use double forward slash to write down whatever you want. So whatever you want means, if you want to know what is system.collections.generic, so you can write it contains lists, and it's a comment means the computer will not execute this line of code. So double forward slash and then write whatever you have understood. So again when you refer to it, it would be very helpful. Now let's start writing our code. I want to remove these comments, and let me just space this properly because I like it this way. And let's write public int speed. So this speed defines the speed of this cube, how fast it will move. Int is an integer value, and this public simply says that it can be used in all the scripts which we can write. But let's write one more line and we will call it as private rigid body RB, short form of rigid body. You can write whatever you want. You can write as speed or move speed. It's up to you. And this is a private variable, and a private variable can only be used in this script only, whereas a public variable can be used in different scripts. That's a simple difference between a public and a private variable. So a speed variable and the RB variable will contain some value. So speed contains an integer value, RB will have a rigid body value. And one more difference is, click on Ctrl Shift and S or Command Shift S. So this will save all the scripts even though we have one. And let's go back to Unity and click on Player. Now go down to script and you notice that it has created a text box for speed, whereas it has not created for the rigid body RB which we have created, because speed is a public variable and rigid body is a private variable. So it has created only the speed, which is a public variable. Now in the start function, a start function is a function which is called at the start of the game. So I will type in RB is equal to get component rigid body. Okay, in this angular brackets I will write it as rigid body, parenthesis and semicolon, and this semicolon means it's a termination of a statement. So the computer will get the difference between this statement and this statement and this statement. Okay, now what this line means, we are giving the value of RB as this rigid body of the player. So we are getting or assigning the value of RB to this. Now in the update function, now an update function is the function which is called, I think, at around 60 times per second. I'm not sure, but it is called repeatedly every time, I think 60 times per second. I'm not sure, but this is how it goes. An update function is called continuously. So in the update function we write float h is equal to input.get axis horizontal. Just write with me and I will explain it. Semicolon. Then float v is equal to input.get axis vertical. Okay. and let me just save it. Now a float is a value which contains decimals and an int is a value which does not contain decimals. It was simple integers. We have created another variable called h and v. Now I would like to show you something, and just remember these words: horizontal and vertical. Go to Unity, click on Edit, Project Settings, Input, and expand this axis, and you find this horizontal and vertical. Now this horizontal, it is like our left and right keys on a keyboard, and A and D, and the vertical is like the up and down arrow and the SW on our keyboard. So if we are moving using our arrow keys or WASD, it will take up a value in this. So if you use your left arrow key, then it will move on to a left direction, which would give a negative value, or it would give a positive value if I click on the right arrow key. So it moves between -1 and 1. If you don't press anything, then it is 0. Same goes for this. If you see what I mean by negative and positive, this negative button is the left arrow key, and the positive button, which is the right arrow key, is this positive value. This is the maximum, which is -1 and 1. It's a range between -1 and 1, and if you don't press anything, you get 0. For the same, for vertical, again it's negative for down arrow or for S, and positive for up arrow and W. And again it has a range between -1 and 1. So it could be 0.75 or -0.34. So whatever values it gets, it is stored in H and V. When you press the arrow keys, a value will be created and it will be stored in H and V. The next line which we'll write, and don't forget the semicolons, it's very important. The next line which we'll write is vector3 move is equal to new vector3 h comma 0 comma v. Now what these lines mean, what is a vector3? A vector3 is kind of 3 dimensions, which is x, y and z. It's a 3 dimension. So this is x, this is y, and this is z. Now whatever values I get in h and v, I'm storing it here as a dimension or as a vector3. So let's click on control or command and apostrophe. Again it will take you to the documentation about vector3. So you'll get to know more about vector3. So it is a representation of 3D vectors, which is x, y and z, and points. So these are the functions which the vector3 has. So I'm storing the values which I get from h and v as a vector3. So it's a 3D representation of 3D vectors. There is vector 2 as well and vector 4, but we need vector 3. Now you will get to know why I stored it. Write rb.add force move multiplied by speed. So an asterisk is used for multiplication. Now this move, I'm using it here. Now what this rb2 dot add force means, it will add some force onto the cube. Now I got the x and the z dimension, so it will move in the x or in the z direction. So it will move in the x and the z direction, and because I'm going to get minus 7.5, which is between -1 and 0, 1, which won't be sufficient to move this cube. So that's why I'm multiplying by some value, which could be 30 or 300. I'm multiplying those values to the dimensions. Now what is this 0? 0 because I don't want to move it in the y-axis. We are not jumping it yet. We will create a jump function when needed. So this is how it is. So whatever values I get, whatever dimensions of x and z axis I get, I'm multiplying it by speed. 0 multiplied by speed would give me 0. So I neglected the y axis. So this is what we need to write. So Control Shift S, let me remove these spaces and go back to Unity. Now you get this speed component. Now let's write it as 28. Again, it's a tried and tested value. You may write a bigger or a smaller value than this. Now click on play. Now use your arrows, and now you can see the cube is moving. Or you can also use the WASD to move the cube. But I don't like this cube rotating. Oh, this rotation, I'm not liking it. So now you might remember from the previous video, we had these constraints. So what we do with these constraints is that we will freeze the rotation on x and z axis. So it will stop rotating. I don't want to remove this x, y, z position or y for the rotation because we need it to move as well. So now you will find the difference. Now when you move it, the rotation doesn't take place. So it's moving parallel to the surface. Now one last thing which I want to do is click on materials folder, and we'll create a physics material. Now what is a physics material? And I will name it as slippery. It will give whether it would be a frictionless surface or will it have a surface full of friction. So it will just set the values on how the ground would be, what would be the characteristic of the ground. Now I will write it as 0.1 and 0.1 for both dynamic friction and static friction. Dynamic friction is the friction while an object is moving over it. The static friction is when an object is at rest or is not moving on the surface. Now click on this ground, and you remember the box collider, we had this material. It's asking for a physics material. Okay, be aware about these brackets, what it wants, so you can give the same value. So I've created a physics material, drag it and drop it onto the material. We'll create another physics material for the player, and yeah, the values would be 0.4, 0.4, both dynamic and static. Click on player and drag it. But the other way to do is you can simply drag this player material onto the player and it will automatically put it. So yeah, this is an easier way to do it. So save scenes, save project. So till now you'll see a bit of difference now with the friction. Yeah, it seems a little frictionless, and we can go off also. Oops, stop, and again we'll play it. Okay, so we can move it around and it seems a little faster. Now it's up to you. You can fidget with these values as well. You can make it as bigger, like 100, and when you make it as 100, it's gone. It's too fast, so I want it as 28. That's an optimum value. So let's save scene and save project. Remember to always save it. So that's it we have for this tutorial. In the next tutorial we'll go ahead with this game and put some more interesting stuff. And if you have any doubts in this tutorial which we had done with, like in scripting, then please write it in the comments down below. So please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye.